Labour has absolutely destroyed the Conservatives. But what does it mean for us? In case you don't know, there's 650 seats available and Labour have won over 400 of them, so absolutely dominated it. But actually, it's not so much Labour that's shocking, it's more how much Reform got a part of it. So I predicted that Reform would get around 18% of the votes. They got slightly less, I think it was around 14% of the votes, but only got 4 or 5 seats. And so one of the first things that I'm going to predict coming to that is Nigel Farage is going to be coming out strong going, we, ironically, need reform in how the system works and everything like that, and kind of rightly so. But should we be worried about Starmer coming in, the head of Labour right now, or actually is it really not going to have an impact? I think the thing that we first need to look at is the economic landscape. So has this come at the right time? Honestly, I don't really know. Like with Rishi calling for this to happen, was it because it's like, do you know what? Like I've done what I can. I don't think I can impact this. We need to hand it over. Did he genuinely think Conservatives had a chance? Honestly, and I mean, theoretically, in my position, Conservatives should really be benefiting me in my financial situation. But I actually think for the last 10 years, Conservatives have done next to nothing to support anybody. And again, that's not really a political view. I just don't think the impact's been had. So was it time for a change? Well, we've got economic instability, and I think we needed this change. But is it the change that we needed? I'm not so sure. In general, most of the articles right now, reading into it, most people just don't seem to think it's going to have that much of an impact. And a lot of this is because, well, I'm not saying Labour overall, but if you look at Starmer, he's really kind of a diet Tory, isn't he? In the fact that he's not really left over here. And I think therein lies the problem for meaningful change and how long is he going to be in power. But more on that later. With regard to the housing market, I think one thing, a pledge that they're looking to make is to ease the planning department. And I think what they mean by this is they're going to reevaluate some of the sites that are available. Are they really green? Are they brownfield sites? What can we do to support brownfield development even more? And so theoretically, this will create more homes. In reality, I think it's a little bit more difficult than that, because just because you change the class of some greenbelt, for example, out there, doesn't mean people can develop there. It needs infrastructure, and it's going to be a very slow development time frame. So yes, it will have a positive impact on easing the housing crisis right now, which needs to be addressed, but is it actually going to have the desired impact? And I think herein lies the problem. A lot of Labour's policies, they sound really lovely. But number one, where are you getting the money for this? And number two, where's the practicality of it? And number three, unintended consequences. And I see this with politicians all the time. It's like, hey, we're going to do this. And I think, well, what about this, and this, that it has the impact? Let me give you an example of stupidity at its finest. So right now on Rightmove, there is the biggest gap between asking price and average property price in the UK. What that means is roughly right now, we're talking about 280, 290k for an average property price in the UK. On Rightmove right now, the average house price is around 380 to 390. Now that doesn't mean that everyone's over-egging their prices. That's not what it is. What it represents is that high value properties, the 400, the 500, the 600,000 pound houses are taking way longer to sell and achieve that house sale price. And so one of the big things that they want to do is add more taxes to high value properties, make it easier for first time buyers with stamp duty relief, bursaries, grants, etc. And you think, yeah, that makes sense. Let's again tax the rich and help the poor, right? And again, that's obviously not the extremes they're playing at. But let's think about that. So we've already got the higher value property prices really struggling. So if they put even more pressure on that, and by adding more taxes on them, then what they're going to do is they're going to decrease the demand for those types of properties, therefore driving those types of property values down. When they go down and say they need to sell, what do they then buy? Well, they then buy lower value properties, therefore putting pressure on the lower value properties. But then, of course, we've got the situation where they're also making it easier for first-time buyers, theoretically, to buy those more affordable homes. So all of the pressure of all of their plans is at that affordable housing category, which is absolutely ridiculous. Then, of course, they've pledged to put even more affordable housing out there, putting strain on builders when there's not the supply of experts already there. So build prices are going up dramatically. Then they're making planning easier to do more, and they're pledging to put more affordable housing. What's the definition of affordable housing? And then making it all easier to buy it in the first place. And again, I'm being a little bit dramatic here, but when you look at all of that, they don't seem to have thought this through very well at all. Rental market implications. So this will be the very interesting one. Honestly, I actually don't think they're going to do much different to what the Tories were talking about. I think there's going to be reform in the rental sector, which honestly, the only people that have got a legitimate reason to be scared about this is shit landlords. And if you're watching this channel, you shouldn't be one of them. The reality is a lot of it's focused on no fault evictions. Well, for me, if you said to me, you can kick a tenant out because you physically need to move into the property, you need to physically sell the property, or there's a rental increase and they're not agreeing to it, then I'm fine. If they're paying on time, they're paying the money that I need to, I'm looking after the property, they're looking after the property, why would I want to kick them out as a buy-to-let investor? And actually, all of those situations where a no-fault eviction wouldn't occur, I think I'm okay with that, and you should be okay with that too. Now, the interesting thing is if they put rent control in. Now, the irony is if you look at Scotland, where they had the strongest rental controls out there, they had the highest rental increases in the UK for the last 100 years because of those rent controls they put in. Now, again, think what you like about politicians. There is a baseline intelligence there, though. And if you've got that evidence and proof that that happened, why would you implement it? I'm really not worried about it coming into play. But honestly, all of these changes, and people don't seem to get this, I feel sorry for the renter. The reality is, right, I am a buy-to-let investor. You might not like that. Hopefully, if you're watching this channel, you're interested in property, but I know you might be somebody that you watch it, you don't like it. The reality is, in order to buy a buy-to-let, I've had to work really hard, earn that money in business, in jobs, etc., to provide a house. Say in Leeds, it's about 50 grand per property. If it becomes untenable under the current structure to own a buy-to-let, then fees need to be added on somewhere, which then get passed to the tenant to make it profitable. If the government does so much that it is impossible to create it as a profit centre, then people like me will just sell off the property, which is not good for renters. Okay, and this is the thing, a lot of these things, they're there and promoted to help people get on the ladder, help people get rent, and actually it's absolutely not. It is absolutely crippling people, and it is crucifying the next wave of tenants and first-time buyers 10 years from now. So honestly, it doesn't take a genius economist to realise it's absolutely moronic. Now, this is where it gets interesting, infrastructure and regeneration development, and I'm pretty happy about this one because it's all about the redeployment of wealth, and essentially they don't want wealth concentrated as much just in London and South East, and this is actually a great strategic move as well. One way of alleviating stress in one area is to add stress in another, kind of like walking across ice, okay? If you walk along it, you can guarantee some damage is going to be caused, but you crouch down, you spread your weight, everything's likely to be okay. And that's what they're looking to do in the UK economy. So they're looking to redistribute the energy and focus on the Midlands and northern towns, which I'm very opinionated on because I live in Leeds. So good for me. But the downside is, where are you getting this money from? So it's all great having these gestures, but how are you actually getting the intended consequence? But I do like the plan. Now here's the big one, taxation. We touched on this earlier, and actually this is why we are going buy right now, in the fact that the idea of this is the fear, which creates some uncertainty in the market. And if you're a smart investor like me, this is where we make our money. When there's fear, there's change, we take advantage of that. And then when things come into reality, if it does, which I very much doubt by the way, it causes restriction in supply, which has the undesired effect, the effect that they didn't think would happen. So they're talking about increasing capital gains, which, by the way, is a tax on investors when they sell an investment property. If you increase capital tax, you then impact people's profit margins. If you impact people's profit margins, you are reducing how good of an idea it is for them to sell the property in the first place. Therefore, they hold the property. When you're holding the property instead of selling it, you're reducing the supply to the market. If you reduce the supply to the market, it doesn't impact the demand. The demand's still there. With less supply, you're driving up the bloody prices. Idiots. I mentioned property taxes already on higher value properties. If they do this, and it wouldn't shock me if they do, thanks government, doesn't help me out, but what happens is it then pushes a wealth gap closer together. And a lot of people go, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The reality is that gap has a lot of benefits to people at the bottom spectrum as well of that. And you might not believe it, but actually, if you push wealth down, then it concentrates the demand in this area. And at the moment, for homeowners, you've got distinct wealth divide. So the demand here is solid and the demand here is very solid. If you make it harder to operate here, then you're pushing people further down, because the people that are buying those properties, they're not the super rich that we all seem to think they are. They are average middle class people that are working bloody hard for the money to get there. You push that down, it concentrates here, and again, the value of properties go down. And actually, if you are watching this and you want to take advantage of this situation, we've got a 3 to 6 month window, because we've also got the prediction of the interest rates coming down, which again, no shock there, cheaper debt, more people buy, increased demand. And I think we're actually going to see a very positive price movement, not positive for a lot of people, but positive price movement in the next 6 to 12 months. And if you want to take advantage of that, you've got the money sat there, 50K or more, and you want help, expertise, connections, and the time put into it, that's what we do at Aspire Property Group. If you want to have a chat about that, put APG in the comments. I'll send you a link, fill in your details. We'll do a one-to-one, completely free strategy session. We've got limited spaces for this month, so make sure to put APG, fill in your details. Look forward to having the chat. The reality is, I actually think Labour's going to give some stability, and I haven't thought as a Labour supporter for a long time, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I really don't, especially with Starmer coming in. I believe he's a bit more of a diet Tory, more than anything. So he's very mid-right almost for Labour, I would say. And the reality is, I think Conservatives have done absolutely nothing to create stability. I wish they did. I really think they had a good shot to make a difference, and they just didn't take it. Rishi just turned out not to be the right guy, in my opinion. Nothing against the guy. So I think this needed stability with such an overwhelming majority from the country is exactly what we need, because success and skyscrapers alike are built on solid foundations. So the reality is, whilst people will promote this, especially the media, as a time of fear, this is probably the most stability that we're going to have over the last decade. And it really is positive. My only concern is how long will Labour put up with Starmer, because he is a diet Tory, and it wouldn't shock me if in 12 months he's maybe not the leader of the party. But the reality is, we can't predict the future. We can only take action on what we know today. And if you're one of those that's going to look at this situation and not be scared and wants to take advantage of this opportunity, put APG, that's Aspire Property Group, APG, in the comments now. I'd love to have a chat. So hopefully this has been valuable. Listen, I don't often talk about politics, but when a big vote like this comes in by a landslide, I think it's really important. I try not to share too much political views on this channel, but I think it directly correlates to making money. Share my opinion. If you're brave enough, if you did vote, who did you vote for and why? And what do you think is going to be the mid to long-term impact of Labour coming in? Hit like if you got value, subscribe if you're not already, and I'll see you in the next video.